Thank you for tuning into another video from JRM Recaps. Spoilers ahead. We start our film in the heart of New York City, where Jay Jameson of the Daily Bugle has just uncovered Peter Parker's secret and exposed him as Spider-Man to the world, while at the same time accusing him as the person responsible for killing Mysterio. During the announcement, Peter witnesses his girlfriend, MJ, trying to navigate the city street below, but having difficulty due to an enormous crowd spotting her and recognizing her as Spider-Man's love interest. As he drops down to help her, they are harassed by the citizens, driving them to take off through the air to escape from the media and the police. They decide to take shelter in Peter's loft, and are joined by Aunt May and Happy, where we discover that the couple are no longer together. Shortly after, the U.S. Division of Damage Control detained them alongside Peter's best friend and longtime companion, Ned, for cross-examination. Peter enlists Matt Murdock, also known as Daredevil, to represent him, and Murdock manages to get his felony accusations dropped. Nonetheless, Peter, MJ, and Ned return to high school for their senior year, but not without repercussions. The controversy leads them to be rejected from every university they apply to, including their primary school, MIT. Peter decides to visit the New York Sanctum, which is the building run and overseen by Dr. Strange, and makes a request to have his superhero identity confidential once again. This way he and his companions can get into MIT. In spite of being warned by Wong not to, Strange endeavors to conjure the spell with the runes of Kafkol. Nonetheless, during the conjuring process, Peter keeps revising the spell by adding names of family and friends he would like excluded from the spell's effects. Due to this, the spell becomes unsteady, compelling Strange to contain it rather than complete it. Strange then learns that Peter never made a simple attempt to explain himself to those responsible for admissions at MIT, which angers him and drives him to forcefully remove Peter from the sanctum. Realizing how drastic of a decision he made, Peter decides to reach out to Flash Thompson, a fellow classmate who was already admitted to MIT. Flash is able to help Peter locate an MIT administrator who is traveling over the nearby Alexander Hamilton Bridge so he can try to appeal his friends and his applications. Peter catches up with the administrator while she is on the bridge stuck in traffic. He tries to make a good impression and set the story straight for his friends, but he ends up making a fool of himself. However, Peter senses danger and moments later is attacked by a villain, unknown to him, named Dr. Octavius, also known as Doc Ock. Peter quickly switches to his spider suit and engages with the enemy. During the fight, the administrator's car is accidentally knocked off the bridge, forcing Peter to save her, all while giving Doc an opening to attack. Peter is unexpectedly trapped by Dr. Octavius, who appears to somehow already know him. Doc Ock confines him and tears out a piece of the Iron Spider armor, moving its nanites onto his tentacles. He goes for another strike, and when Spider-Man uncovers his face in order to shield his body from the blow, it appears the Doc does not recognize Peter. Spider-Man then assumes command over Doc Ock's tentacles with the suit's nanites and saves the MIT administrator from tumbling off the bridge. She chooses to assist him by getting his companions and him admitted out of appreciation. Moments later, a huge explosion erupts on the bridge and the Green Goblin shows up and tries to go after Spider-Man. However, he and Dr. Octavius are shipped into the Sanctum, where Strange detains Doc Ock and a villain named Lizard. He explains to Peter that Dr. Octavius, Lizard, and Green Goblin are not of this universe, but rather from a parallel world inside the multiverse. He explains they were transported into this reality by the tainted spell since they all know the identity of Spider-Man. To contain this spell, Strange secures it in the Machina de Cadavis, a mysterious containment module. Peter is selected to help find and catch these visitors from another dimension, and is even given magical enhancements to his suit that allows him to shoot a special web that will transport enemies into magical containers. With help from MJ and Ned, Spider-Man finds Electro outside the city limits, draining power from a remote power grid. Surprised, he goes after Spider-Man and gains the advantage. However, a new visitor named Sandman steps in the middle to protect Peter. The two work together to cut the electrical cables, which completely restores Electro's body. At this point, Electro is webbed and shipped off to the Sanctum. Sandman assumes Spider-Man killed Electro, so he tries to attack him, but is then shot and teleported as well. Somewhere else, Norman Osborn is plotting to escape from his Green Goblin persona, breaking his mask prior to escaping to a feast facility looking for shelter. Spider-Man finds Osborn through the help of Aunt May, and leads him to the Sanctum. It is here that Osborn, Doc Ock, Electro, and the rest of the gang learn they were not alive back home in their own dimensions, but somehow the spell had the ability to revive them and bring them back in the current one. However, if they were to return home to their dimensions, it would mean they would surely perish. Strange informs Spider-Man that these three will all eventually die battling their own Spider-Men. He plans to utilize the Machina to reverse the spell and send them back to their destinies for the sake of the greater multiverse. Persuaded that they can be restored of their adversarial qualities and be saved from death, Spider-Man takes the Machina before Strange can utilize it and flees. Strange gives pursuit, takes Spider-Man's magic back, and sends him into the mirror dimension to recover the Machina. While there, Strange attempts to make Peter aware that the health of the multiversal is dependent on their newfound guests being sent back. Refusing to accept these statements as truth, Spider-Man entraps Strange in a webbing and takes his sling ring prior to leaving the mirror dimension. He passes the ring to Ned and the Machina to MJ prior to letting the villains out of their cells. Taking everyone back to Happy's condo, Spider-Man tries to develop remedies for the multiversal villains. He begins with Dr. Octavius, utilizing a Stark Industries fabricator to design an alternative inhibitor chip for his limbs, and re-establish his higher brain capability. To Doc Ock's astonishment, the device works. Next, Electro has an energy siphon introduced onto him which is intended to remove his powers for good, but will take some time to complete. Suddenly we see that Spider-Man's spider senses go off, and he has a strange sensation of danger that he has never experienced before. Realizing the cause, he immediately detains Osborn by webbing his hand to a nearby device. It's at this moment we realize Osborn has been suppressed and Green Goblin is present. The Goblin begins speaking to the group about how they shouldn't throw their powers away because they are gifts and not a curse. He ends up persuading Electro to remove his energy siphon and revert back to his old ways. Meanwhile, Aunt May is able to grab the rest of the cures while the Green Goblin was talking, and flees the apartment before fighting breaks out. Electro takes an arc reactor, and while drawing its power, shoots Octavius out of the structure. Lizard, Electro, and Sandman escape, while an epic battle ensues between Green Goblin and Spider-Man, with the two ultimately ending up in the front lobby of the building. Aunt May sees the Goblin choking Peter and tries to help by infusing the potential cure into him, however, it does not work. Goblin then calls upon his glider which runs over Aunt May, injuring her. He follows this up by throwing a pumpkin bombs, which Spider-Man is unable to stop, and it detonates near them. Spider-Man manages to find May in the rubble. Not realizing that she had been seriously hurt, May tells her nephew not to quit helping other people regardless of what happens, and lectures him that with great power comes great responsibility, a quote well known to Spider-Man fans. As DODC officials surround them, Spider-Man attempts to save May but is unable to. Unfortunately, she passes away while he is holding her in his arms. Happy shows up on the scene and is quickly caught by the police. Pain-stricken, Spider-Man escapes, his guilt intensifying with Jameson's gaslighting broadcast of the assault. MJ becomes uneasy after not hearing from Spider-Man. She gets ready to initiate the Machina, while Ned manages to open an entryway with the sling ring unintentionally. Trying to find Peter, they see what appears to be Spider-Man on the opposite side of the entrance, waving him over. Before long they understand that this Spider-Man isn't theirs, but instead one from another universe that recently battled the Lizard and Electro. Once more Ned attempts to find Peter, but summons one more substitute Spider-Man, who recently battled Green Goblin, Doc Ock, and Sandman. They ultimately manage to find their Spider-Man alone on top of a midtown building and try to comfort him about his loss, but he is too troubled about his failures to even care. Before he can utilize the Machina to send the other multiverse Voyagers home, the other two Peters start sharing their very own encounters of misfortunes and guilt to help him adapt and understand that he isn't alone, and if he looks deep within himself, he has the strength to overcome this. An encouraged Spider-Man then decides to do what he intended to do, mend the visitors. Ned, MJ, and Peter then retreat to a school lab at their high school to make the solution to fix the villains. Osborn's Peter designs an anti-serum for Green Goblin as Electro's Peter reproduces the lizard counteractant to get him once again to normal, while our hometown Spider-Man readies the remedies for Sandman and Electro. Then Ned brings them to the Statue of Liberty through a portal while he and MJ stay in the lab. Spider-Man phones into the Daily Bugle to communicate a message, involving Machina as a lure while declaring his presence to Sandman, Electro, and Lizard. They eventually show up and go after the 3 Spider-Men on the structure. The web-slingers can't communicate well, which drives them to be handily overwhelmed by their adversaries. Coming together, Spider-Man accepts command of the triplet because of his experience with the Avengers. The 3 embrace codenames: Spider-Man as Peter 1, Osborn's Spider-Man as Peter 2, and Electro's Spider-Man as Peter 3. Their plan is to focus on one enemy at a time, injecting the cure into them in order to bring them back to normal, starting with Sandman first. Once they are able to restrain Lizard, Peter 3 recovers Sandman's cure and passes the gadget to Peter 1, who then passes the remedy to Peter 2, permitting Sandman to be neutralized. The 3 Spider-Men try to take the arc reactor from Electro, however he ends up being too powerful for them to stop because of his expanded power from the energy source. Lizard breaks free and goes after MJ and Ned in the lab, driving Peter 1 out and battling him. With the assistance of Ned and his sling ring, Peter 1 makes Lizard tear open a container containing the cure, which returns him back into his human form. Ned accidentally summons Strange to the combat zone who, after seeing the Lizard return to his human form, acknowledges Peter 1's plan is working. Strange snatches back the Machina and his sling ring from Ned. Peter 2 and Peter 3 are overwhelmed by Electro, until Octavius shows up to separate the arc reactor himself and render Electro weak due to the completion of the neutralizer. Peter 3 reconciles with Electro while Peter 2 happily reunites with Octavius. Peter 1 goes back to see Strange as he plans to utilize the Machina to send everybody home. Out of nowhere, Green Goblin ambushes the gathering and takes the Machina, but Strange and Octavius are able to snatch it back. Unaware to them, Green Goblin had snuck a pumpkin bomb inside the item. It explodes and opens up the unsteady spell contained within, tearing the fabric of the universe and creating an opening to the multiverse. Additionally, the explosion drives MJ from the top of the Statue of Liberty and free falling to the ground. Peter 1 plunges to protect her, however is attacked by Green Goblin, preventing him from saving her. Peter 3 watches as the situation unfolds, eerily similar to his situation with his love, Gwen Stacy, back in his dimension. Without hesitation he jumps after MJ and ends up saving her, and starts to get emotional as it reminds him of the night Gwen Stacy passed away, and he was not able to save her. As the sun rises, Peter 1 faces Green Goblin alone. Consumed with rage, he violently pummels him and endeavors to finish him off with his glider, but is stopped by Peter 2. However, it leaves Peter 2 vulnerable to being stabbed in the back by Green Goblin. Peter 3 gives Peter 1 the counter serum, permitting him to fix Osborn from Green Goblin. When Osborn receives full control of his body again, he sees Peter 2's stab wound, which is non-deadly, and understands the degree of the harm he had caused. Meanwhile, Strange battles to keep the tears in the universe intact, in which new enemies are now preparing to attack this reality. Peter 1 understands the severity of the situation, and realizes there's only one thing to do now. He has Strange establish another spell that will inevitably erase Peter Parker from everyone's memory, even his close friends and family. Peter 1 hugs his other selves, who urge him to keep moving forward as Spider-Man. Strange fixes the cracks with the new spell and effectively ships Peter 2, Peter 3, and the accompanying villains back to their own universes. Spider-Man embraces Ned and MJ for the last time, while promising to return at some point in time and assist them with remembering him. He then leaves as Strange releases the spell, leaving the whole world totally unaware of Peter's existence as Spider-Man. A couple weeks have passed and it is now the holidays. Peter attempts to reconnect with his MIT-bound companions, MJ and Ned, when he visits a local coffee shop, but then remembers MJ's injuries and chooses not to. Instead, he decides to visit his Aunt May's grave to offer his respects, and is surprisingly joined by Happy, who is likewise now a stranger to him. Battling to continue with his new life, Peter moves into another condo alone and starts considering acquiring his GED. Made aware of crime on his telephone, he puts together a basic suit and continues his heroics undisturbed as Spider-Man, honoring Aunt May's mantra of community service and responsibility. In a final scene, we see the universe-displaced Eddie Brock and his symbiote partner, Venom, sitting at a bar and talk with the barkeep about other superhuman people and the Blip. While pondering how to protect this new world, the team is quickly moved back to their universe by strange spell, unaware that a piece of the symbiote is on the counter, left behind in the existing world. Thank you for watching our recap. If you enjoyed this video, please be sure to hit the thumbs up button and subscribe for future videos. Also, try some of our other videos displayed on screen.